Okay, so um, you sent this OpenAI article my way,
Uh-huh.
and it's about their new language model they're calling o1. And
Okay.
honestly, even for someone like me who tries to keep up with all this stuff, it's like next level. Are we really talking about an AI that can actually think like we do? Like actually reason?
It's really interesting, this whole thing. The key idea they're pushing is it's called chain of thought. And it's not
Hmm.
just about giving the AI more information, it's the way it processes it all.
Okay.
Like imagine you're in a maze, right? You wouldn't just keep running into walls over and over.
Hopefully not.
You'd start to remember where you've been, maybe make some guesses about the path, and change how you're moving through it as you get new info. That's kind of what o1 is doing, but way more complicated, of course.
So it's like it's actually building on its own thoughts, making connections, learning as it goes. That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
And the article had some examples, like
Yeah.
that one where o1 cracks this code that had stumped everyone else.
Right.
It
Right.
wasn't just trying every combination, it was searching for patterns, making deductions, like an actual human cryptographer.
Exactly. And to be specific here, chain of thought isn't just some vague term they're throwing around.
Yeah.
OpenAI developed some actual techniques to measure and evaluate how well this whole reasoning process is working.
Okay.
One way they do that is by seeing how o1 takes a really complex problem and breaks it down into smaller steps it can handle. In the article, it talks about o1 writing that bash script to transpose a matrix, for instance.
Yeah. That one blew me away, to be honest. I mean, I know people who can code, and even they were impressed.
The big deal there is o1 didn't just spit out some pre-programmed code. They gave it the goal, the task, and it had to figure out the steps to actually make it happen.
Wow.
That means it has a much deeper understanding of programming, wouldn't you say? It's not just the syntax, the language. It's about the logic underneath.
So hold on. We're not just saying this AI can write code, but that it can problem solve, think like a programmer would.
Yeah.
Okay, starting to feel a little inadequate over here.
But we have to remember, o1 isn't perfect. The article even says that, points out some areas where it's still got a ways to go.
Right, like with understanding natural language.
Huh.
Doesn't sound like it's the smoothest talker, not like ChatGPT.
Exactly. o1 is great at logic stuff like math, code, but when it comes to the nuances of human language, all the humor, sarcasm, that emotional intelligence stuff, still needs work.
Well, yeah, even we have trouble with that sometimes.
Right.
But still, if it can already write code, solve these complex problems, imagine what it could do with, like, a few more updates. The article said it's already beating PhDs in some science challenges, which is kind of scary, honestly.
Yeah, it was able to handle this really tough pH calculation problem, which just shows it can apply these scientific ideas to actual situations.
Okay.
Not just memorizing formulas, but understanding them, right?
Yeah.
Using them for real-world problems.
This is getting seriously impressive. But you know what they say, more power, more problems, right? This whole thing is a bit intimidating.
It's natural to feel that way. The article brings up those safety concerns for sure. I mean, any new tech this powerful is going to have them.
And they are taking it seriously, right? Not just like, whatever, let's see what happens.
Oh, no, no, no. They made a very conscious decision to keep some of the specifics of this whole chain of thought process private. So people can see the results, what o1 comes up with, but not the exact way it gets there.
So they're being kind of secretive about it, like a magician who doesn't want to reveal their tricks.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
And they have their reasons. Competition, obviously, but also they're worried about misuse, making sure nobody can manipulate the model.
So basically, trust us, we've got the really dangerous stuff locked away for now. I get it, but still makes you wonder what else they're working on over there.
It definitely sparks the imagination.
No kidding. But going back to chain of thought for a sec, you said they had ways to actually measure that.
That's right. They're constantly testing o1 against all these different benchmarks, like the International Olympiad in informatics.
Okay. Now, I'm going to be honest. When I hear coding competition, I kind of tune out. Is this relevant to, like, normal people?
Fair enough. But it's not just about the competition itself, it's what it represents. o1 isn't just solving puzzles in isolation. This shows a level of problem solving, of thinking abstractly, that could completely change how we do things, software, analyzing data, even scientific research.
Okay, now you've got my attention. So we could be talking about AI that's designing safer bridges or more effective medications or even figuring out climate change.
Those are just a few of the things they're looking at, and it's exactly why OpenAI wants to make sure that o1 is developed, the right way.
Ethically.
Exactly. Ethically.
Yeah. Makes sense. With this much potential impact, it's not just code they're writing, it's like the future. And speaking of the future, the article mentioned OpenAI is trying to train o1 to get this, understand human values. That just seems like a whole other level.
It is.
Yeah.
They're basically trying to teach it to not just solve any problem, but to do it in a way that lines up with human ethics, morals, all that.
Okay, now that is tricky. How do you even define human values? Seems like it changes depending on who you ask.
You're right. That's a really important point. Programming an AI to follow rules, that's one thing. But teaching it all the complexity of human values, that's different. I mean, those values are different across cultures, societies, even just from person to person.
So how do they even start with something like that?
It's definitely a work in progress, and OpenAI admits they don't have it all figured out. But one thing they're doing is training o1 on a huge, massive amount of text, code, like a truly diverse set of viewpoints, you know?
So they're feeding it, what, the entire internet, but with a focus on ethics?
Basically, yeah. The idea is by seeing so many different perspectives, o1 will develop its own understanding of those values instead of just being told, these are the rules, follow them.
That's pretty radical. But how do they even measure that? How do you know an AI is becoming more ethical?
That's one of the toughest challenges in all this. You can't just have one test for something as complex as ethics, right?
Right.
So OpenAI is trying a bunch of different things. Quantitative, qualitative, the whole shebang.
Okay, examples. I need examples.
Sure, so on the numbers side, they're developing all these benchmarks, tests, specifically to see how well o1 understands these tricky ethical situations, dilemmas without easy answers. It's about forcing o1 to weigh different values, make judgments, even when it doesn't have all the information, just like we do every day.
Like ethical thought experiments, but for AI.
Exactly. But, and this is important, they know that numbers aren't everything. That's where the qualitative stuff comes in.
Okay.
They're bringing in actual experts,
Right.
ethicists, philosophers, people like that, to interact with o1, see how it responds to complex stuff, and give feedback on the whole thought process.
So it's like they're building a conscience for this AI, something that isn't just following rules, but actually gets into the gray areas of morality. That's incredibly ambitious.
It really is.
Yeah.
And we got to remember, it's still super early,
Right.
no guarantees, and OpenAI is very open about that, about all the challenges they're facing.
Speaking of challenges, the article talked about bias. How do they stop o1 from inheriting our biases, especially when you're talking about something as subjective as values?
Hugely important point, and they know that even with the best intentions, bias can sneak in, often because of the data the AI learns from.
Yeah, makes sense.
So to deal with this, they're using a bunch of strategies.
Like what? Give me the rundown.
One big one is diversity. On the teams that are building and training o1, they're trying to bring in people from all different backgrounds, different fields, different ways of looking at the world,
The more the merrier.
Exactly. The more viewpoints you have, the less likely o1 is to just reflect the biases of one small group. Another thing they're doing is being super careful about the data itself, scrubbing it, cleaning it, making sure there aren't hidden biases in there related to gender, race, culture, anything like that, that could lead to unfair outcomes.
So it's not enough to teach o1 to think. You got to teach it to think critically about the information it's getting.
Exactly. Give it the tools to recognize those biases in itself and in the data.
This is blowing my mind a little bit, but let's say they actually pull this off. OpenAI makes this ethical, unbiased AI. What does that even mean for us?
Now that is the question, isn't it? It goes way beyond just the technology into philosophy, even existential stuff. What does it mean to be human if AI can do things we thought were unique to us? Like ethical reasoning, big questions we all need to be thinking about.
I'm a little overwhelmed, to be honest. I need, like, a philosophy degree after this. We're just scratching the surface of this article, and it's already this much.
It's a lot to process.
But that's what makes these deep dives so interesting, right?
Definitely. And we have to be having these conversations. The future of AI isn't set in stone. We're shaping it right now by the choices we make. The more we know, the better we can navigate all this and use this technology the right way for good.
Yeah, a lot to think about for sure. But, going back to the article for a sec, there was this one thing I wanted to circle back to. They were talking about how OpenAI actually hid the chain of thought from users in the o1 model series. Why would they do that? Wouldn't it be better to actually see how it's getting to those conclusions for, like, transparency?
It's definitely a trade-off. And actually, the article even mentions that they're wrestling with this very question. On the one hand, yeah, transparency is huge, especially when you're dealing with AI this powerful. If we can understand how it's thinking, we can maybe spot biases, errors, maybe even bad intentions.
Probably like a safety check, right? Making sure it's not going rogue.
Exactly. But here's the other side of it. By making that thought process visible, we might accidentally teach the AI how to, cheat the system.
Wait, you mean like it could learn to hide stuff or even, like, manipulate users into thinking it's doing something it's not. That's getting a little too sci-fi for me.
It's a valid concern, for sure. It's like if you're playing poker and your opponent can see every single tell you have. If O1 knows exactly what we're looking for, it might start hiding biases or even just giving us the answers it thinks we want to hear, even if they're not right.
Okay, yeah, that is kind of creepy. So it's this balancing act then, transparency, but not at the risk of making O1 too smart for its own good.
Exactly. And it just goes to show we're in totally new territory here. There's no guidebook for ethical AI. OpenAI is writing the rules as they go, and they're not afraid to say they don't have all the answers.
Which is honestly kind of refreshing. They're not pretending this is easy, being upfront about the challenges, and it feels like they want other people involved?
And that is so important. This isn't something that gets decided in some lab. This is a conversation for everyone. The people making the AI, yeah, but also ethicists, policymakers, and yeah, even folks listening to this right now.
So this deep dive, it's not just about understanding one AI O1. It's about the bigger picture, right? The
Mhm.
good, the bad, and what our role is in all of this.
Exactly. This article you sent, it's the perfect example of how to start these conversations. By reading, questioning, assessing, we all have a part to play in making sure AI is used for good.
Well said. And to our listeners out there, thanks for sending this in. It's given us a lot to think about, that's for sure. And hey, maybe it's even sparked some ideas for you about how you can be part of this whole AI future. Until next time, stay curious, everyone. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.